should have anchored the line and length of the budget. Because if he addressed the issue of crime in this country, we deal with issues of jobs, trade, domestic and foreign business. When you deal with the issues of employment, you put people in certain capacity, you deal with small business, you deal with forex. So you are fixing so many problems as an anchor that wasn't addressed. I would have hoped that the minister would have used the opportunity to showcase what is the next big thing for Trinidad and Tobago going into 2025, an election year. What are the new sources of foreign direct investment? And I mean, he boasted about the manufacturing, the non-energy manufacturing sector doing very well, and which we congratulate that sector. I can tell you it is because of their own ambition and their skill and their hard work. It had nothing to do with any policy direction of the state. What the state did, they provided a bit more U.S. Foreign currency for that market, and that has worked well. But where are the FDI projects? And don't tell me Phoenix Park. We've been beating the Phoenix Park item like a donkey. Up to today, we only have 2 foreign companies in that park. We have about 12 local. So when you look at what is the FDI, it will be minimum. They boast about 4,500 jobs being created in that park. Right now there's 300 jobs. There was no timeline. There was nothing given to say, well, look, in the next 24 months or 36 months, this is where we're going to be. And the man had the gall to say that we're going to build 4 more in every corner of this country. So we're going to make 3 new white elephants. Right? You haven't figured out how to bring into the value this $500 million that we've spent on this Phoenix Park project to get it to fruition, but you're already talking about 3 and 4 more. So really and truly, this entire budget, really, it lacked inspiration, it lacked innovation for the businessman outside there, the investor, who has to make a decision whether I should invest my money here in Trinidad and Tobago, or do I go to Guyana, or do I go to Barbados or Grenada or to the US? You know, that there was nothing in this budget, Dinesh, that encouraged any investor to keep their money here in Trinidad and Tobago. And while, you know, we may be accused of being, you know, pronouncers of doom and gloom, our job in the opposition benches is not to rubber stamp anything of this government. Our job is to listen, to poke holes in every single thing Minister Imbert says. And if the holes are sufficiently large enough, he has an opportunity to plug it. And he's plugging it in the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So our job is not to rubber stamp anything. So we will continue to poke. We will continue to see where the legislation is faulty, where it doesn't make sense. And we will bring it in the debate. Every single one of my colleagues in that debate over the next 4 or 5 days, we are going to expose every single component of a weak presentation. And inside there, offer an alternative in terms of the United National Congress being a government in waiting. My colleagues and I have several projects and plans that we feel could put Trinidad and Tobago back on a better track. So we wait patiently for the opportunity for a general election to have a change of government in this country. And I feel very, very assured that in time, we will get an opportunity to reposition Trinidad and Tobago back on the right track going into 2030 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Paray. I mean, again, a very comprehensive overview. And having listened to both yourself and don't wish to limit Dinersh Rambally's preliminary overview of his thoughts on the budget, but I would want him possibly to factor in your thoughts on government's revenue projections and the fiscal targets. Some of these things can be worked into your overview.
All right, sure. Thanks so much. Well, this is the 9th budget that has been presented by Minister Imbert, the 9th budget of the Rowley P&M administration. If it's one thing, they're very consistent. And they're very consistent in not treating with the economic ills that this country needs to find solutions to. So on the issue of economic growth, this is a country that has not grown since 2015. As a matter of fact, numbers would show that we've shrunk nominally by about at least 10%. Right? This is a country that has not been able to even start the diversification process, which brings us again squarely back on the heels of foreign exchange, the loss of official reserves, actually the bleeding of official reserves, and the fact that we have not been able to identify even one sector so far in the last 8 years that is ripe for diversification. Right? The issue on the fiscal side, this is a government that has run fiscal deficits continuously for the last 8 years, and this budget, they said there was a small fiscal surplus last year, but that's preliminary, and I expect when the numbers are revised, that actually will turn into a deficit. So they've run deficits continuously. This budget is also going to be a budget that is running at a deficit, which means then for 10 years we would have incurred significant fiscal deficits. That by itself is one issue, but related to that is the fact that those deficits have been funded by debt, by borrowing. And I think that's something that we're going to have to talk about a little more in the program, because the borrowing numbers are staggering, and it paints us in a very serious position that brings us back to where we were in the late 1980s. Again, in terms of the vision for where we go forward, and where we go forward in terms of the world is preparing itself to deal with climate change. You have countries now talking about how do you green your financial sector, how do you green your economy, how do you carry through a just and equitable transition to reduce your carbon footprint. This is a country on a per capita basis. We are 7th in the world when it comes to our carbon footprint. And in the last 8 years, there's been no talk, no vision, no plan. How do you move to a low carbon economy? I just want to take a piece off here from what MP Paray talked about in terms of the the non-energy sector and the fact that it's performing well. Well, here's the sleight of hand in that. 67% of the value added in that non-energy sector comes from petrochemicals, right? Because what we've done is we've moved away from the Trinidad and Tobago system of national accounts to the international system. So it's very difficult to now pinpoint where is the energy sector and where is the non-energy sector. So it's quite easy now to hide, right, the petrochemicals inside there and say, well, hey, that's the non-energy sector, and it's doing good, right? So when you take that out, you realize that the growth is not as impressive, and definitely the export earnings all belong to the most belong to the petrochemical sector. And a final point on something that we need to talk about. You talked about investor confidence. There is a major scorpion sting in this budget that I have not heard the business community even speak about. And that is when Minister Imbert indicated that he's going to find strategies to increase foreign currency repatriation. Right? What is foreign currency repatriation? And he said for businesses. Excuse. That simply means if you're earning foreign currency, we're going to find a way to take that foreign currency and give you local currency. That is what repatriation means. Right? So I think we now need to find out what is Minister Imbert's plan when it comes to foreign currency repatriation, because as far as I know, on April 13th of this year, we celebrated 30 years of this country having no capital controls. They were done away on April 13th, 1993. No capital controls, which meant that capital is free to come in and capital is free to move out. Right? So I'll pause here.
Thank you, Jwala. As I ask Dr. Bhushan Singh for his thoughts, Bhushan, just following on, maybe a little bit from what Jwala has indicated. In your preliminary overview, maybe you can touch a little bit on whether, were there any initiatives aimed at diversifying the economy beyond the energy and oil sector? So you don't limit yourself to that, but hopefully, I know you was one in previous programs, you have been keeping a keen eye on these issues. So I'll ask you to tell us your views.
Certainly. Thank you, Dinesh. And first of all, I want to start off by saying that the budget statement is a political statement. And the Minister of Finance is an experienced politician, and he would have presented the budget in a very upbeat manner, being an experienced politician. But it doesn't take away from some current realities that we are facing in the economy. The first thing is that the minister said that there will be no new taxes. He has presented a budget with no new taxes. But when you look at it, there will be the introduction of the property tax. There is the imminent increase in the TNTEC rates and the WASA rates. And additionally, we have inflation, both domestic and imported inflation. And the cost of living is going up significantly. There was an increase in the minimum wage, $20.50. All right, good. But could that really offset the increased cost of living? That's a question to be answered. And we talk about diversification. Last year, total revenue from the oil sector was in the vicinity of around 25 billion, was projected at around 25 billion. And this year it is projected at 16.7 billion. From 25, you move to 16.7. There's a big drop, right? In the non-oil sector, and I take Jawala's point in how we classify the energy and non-energy sectors. Non-oil sector last year was 30.15 billion, and non-oil for this fiscal is 35. So we had a decrease from 25 to 16 billion in the oil sector, and in the non-oil, you only increased by 5. So we still have a deficit there in terms of the contribution, and we have the issue of forex now. The forex issue, we have this thing about demand and supply. But one of the things with foreign exchange is that people are trying to get their hands on US. I think that there's capital flight taking place. People are trying to get their hands on foreign exchange because there's a certain lack of confidence in holding or having all your eggs in one basket in terms of the TT dollar. So that is something there. In terms of the diversification effort, I've heard plans, over and over about, different sectors. Once upon a time, there was 7 sectors, printing and packaging and film and so on, and that quietly, yachting, that quietly fell off the radar. We've had, initiatives, but I'm not really seeing, any one sector that we would have held on to and say, look, this is where we're going. This is what we're looking at to prepare for, a post-oil and gas economy. While, the minister spoke about the Dragon Field and Manatee, because if you look at oil and gas production, there's significant decreases. But, with Dragon, there are so many ifs and buts. There's the political aspect of it, with getting permission from the U.S. government, we have to negotiate this with Venezuela under, whatever the conditions that the U.S. Say that we could negotiate. There are so many uncertainties there. But the one thing here that when you look at the budget is that the cost of living is going up significantly. How this is going to affect the average man on the street? this is the cost of living there, that when you sum it up all together,
Richard, for this first part of the segment, traditionally, Richard, you are a member of the Shogunas Chamber. You are, of course, a central businessman. I know you always sort of lobby for the SMEs because you're drawn from the SMEs. You have been doing a lot of advocacy for the SME sector. In your overview, I hope you touch on what perspective you think this budget has, in any way, if at all, impacted on SMEs in a positive way. Issues related to job creation and unemployment, these things. So, in your overview, tell us what, are your takeaway from this budget.
Thank you, Dinesh. I was listening to that 4-hour speech. I mean, I was not like you guys sitting in the parliament. So I took a little break sometime, So I don't envy you guys. I was, waiting with a bated breath to hear something about small and medium-sized enterprises. And if there were going to be any fiscal policies that were going to be initiated to assist these businesses. I mean, it has been touted all over the world that SMEs are the backbone of most economies. They play an important role in development. In Trinidad and Tobago, I think they employ over 200,000 people. Why we are not paying sufficient attention to them? These companies are facing total closure, some of them. And what are we going to do to help these companies? I mean, one of the major things that is affecting them is crime. And even today in the news, we saw that the Prasads, 278-year-old, were house-breaking, invasion, and were beaten. What are the encouragement for these businesses that are struggling to remain? And I mean, MP Paray talk about foreign direct investment. But what about local investment in your economy? We have to continue to encourage businesses to take their hard-earned savings, not even profits now, and invest it back, continue to create employment, because these businesses, I think they are around 25,000 or 26,000 existing. During the COVID, I think over 6,000 was closed. I mean, what are there and what policies are being initiated? And I sat down there and I listened. And I wasn't hearing anything to encourage me as a businessman. Nothing to encourage me to, hey, make an investment. Because we have to look at growth. And there are a lot of pillars of growth for SMEs. I mean, one of the pillars is availability of cash flows. Where are we going to get cash flow to continue to do investment, to continue to invest in new products? We're not seeing that happening. So I am struggling along those lines as a business person to understand those items. I mean, I went to the TTMA presentation, and the minister boasts that there were a lot of stimulus packages that were afforded by this government to SMEs. And the reason why, and I was taken aback by it, the reason why the SMEs are not accessing these stimulus package is because over 80% of them are not structured properly. Some of them don't even have bank accounts. And I mean, I as a financial consultant, I'm also a business consultant dealing with a lot of businesses, and I don't see that. What I see is that there are a lot of, to access these financial packages is so rigid for small businesses. It is difficult for them. So I am seeing that. And if we are to give accessibility to these businesses, we have to create some way or ease some restrictions so that these businesses can access these funding to invest locally and continue to grow. And I'm not seeing that. I waited. I mean, at some point I saw that he was flipping those pages, and he actually skipped a bundle of pages and went to crime, because I think he would have almost left that out. And I mean, crime is the #1 issue that is affecting the population. I mean, I know people are not even sleeping in the night, right? They have their constantly watching their cameras, listen for their dogs. I mean, what are we going to do to ease that burden? You have people who have businesses, and they are afraid to be in the businesses because they don't know who is coming through their doors. right? And we have to alleviate that fear. We are not living in a society that is allowing us to progress. And we are putting thoughts in the business people's mind to fly away from this country and go somewhere else and live. And that is not good for Trinidad and Tobago. And that will create more unemployment and disaster for our country. So we could delve into that at a future time later on in the program.
Thank you, Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, you obviously are hearing a lot from our experts on the panel. They have a lot of information at their disposal, and their analysis is par excellence. So I just want to take a very short break. I know time is quickly running out on us. We almost concluded our first hour, but we'll take a very short break, and then we get in some more into the details.
I am Ramnaresh Dwarika, inviting you to the program Addiction and Recovery, where we discuss issues relating to alcoholism and drug addiction. Be you an active user or in recovery? Tune in every Thursday at 9 a.m. This is an interactive program, and you can call 663-1027 or 663-2335, where we can interact. Join me, Ramnaresh Dwarika, for the program Addiction and Recovery every Thursday at 9 a.m.
Join me, Harold Nabry, every Saturday afternoon from 4 for the program Suhana Safar right here on your favorite station, TV Jagriti. Suhana Safar, a program that goes behind the scenes, relives the pleasant memories and enjoy the modern music. I will explore the various aspects of the Indian film industry and celebrate with the players of this vast industry. You will hear some ghazals, bhajans, semi-classical music, and we'll also look at the history and development of the Indian music world. That's Suhana Safar every Saturday from 4 p.m. right here on your favorite station, TV Jagriti.
Hey my friends, you are invited to join us on radio and TV Jagriti with Mrs. Sharda Maharaj every Thursday from 4 p.m. right here on your number one. Inspirational, enlightening and uplifting. Ek Saath with Mrs. Sharda Maharaj on radio and TV Jagriti Thursdays at 4 p.m.
I don't know what to do, Mom. He's my children's father, and I really love him, but he only reacts like this when he drinks.
Ma'am, I will ensure that you get all the help that you need.
The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is devoted to providing assistance to victims of domestic violence. If you're a victim of domestic violence, a report should be made to the police immediately so the matter can be addressed in the most appropriate manner. Domestic violence is very serious. Do not wait until it's too late.
The Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West presents a post-budget panel discussion to be held on Wednesday, 4th October 2023 from 7 to 9 p.m. on radio and TV Jagriti. Panelists will include MP for Pointe-a-Pierre David Lee, MP for Mayara Rushton Paray, economist Dr. Bhujan Singh, former Central Bank Governor Jawala Rambaran, financial accountant Richard Ramkisoon, hosted by MP for Chaguanas West Dinersh Rambally. Do tune in to this most important discussion live on radio and TV Jagriti.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening again. Thank you for remaining with us. Again, I want to express my sincerest gratitude to the panelists. Let's get quickly into it. I know, Jawala, I want to start with you. I know you raised something as, if I may use the analogy, a common thread running through all of the budgets since 2015. You spoke about consistent fiscal deficit. And possibly, sustaining that with debt and borrowing. So I just want you to explain that a little bit more for, myself and of course, the viewing and listening audience so that they understand just how deep in a crisis we might be.
All right, thanks so much, Dinesh. Let me just kind of paraphrase from page 9 of the budget when the minister said public debt is likely to reach, let's say, 71% of GDP at the end of 2023. We are therefore confident that we can maintain debt at our soft target level that is less than 75% of GDP in the medium term, well below many of our peers in the region. Right? So here's the first thing. Public debt has mushroomed from 2015 to now, so we certainly well above 70% of GDP. The number that sort of gives comfort is a number somewhere between 50 to 60% is considered fairly sustainable, right? That you could, things are not as bad. What this suggests is that we are heading into the space of what we call debt distress. And this government has actually borrowed so far, up between September 2015 to June 2023, based on what I could put together, $125 billion. Right? That's a large amount of money. Added to that, you've raided the Heritage and Stabilization Fund to the tune of $2 billion. Right? So you've not only borrowed, you've gone into the fiscal buffers. And he's comparing us now to the countries in the Caribbean and saying, well, we're better off than them. Right? Here's the thing. Yeah, there are a few countries in the Caribbean that are actually hitting debt to GDP ratios beyond 100%. But you know what those countries have had to do? So let's take Barbados, 2018. They've had to restructure domestic debt and international debt. Suriname, right, is still in the middle of a debt restructuring after 3 years, right? They've managed to make a deal with private creditors, but they can't get China to the table. Jamaica, a few years back, had to restructure both domestic debt and external debt, right? Yeah, Belize had to do Belize is what we call a serial defaulter. So they love to default on debt. So their last debt restructuring was where they did an actual debt swap, a debt for climate swap, right? The issue is that we are starting to reach into the point of debt distress. And I say this because a lot of the conditions similar today are similar to what prevailed in the late 1980s. Right, where we ran up a significant amount of debt, we ran out of foreign exchange, we had no choice, but the only way we could restructure debt, and here's the next thing, the only way you could do an external debt restructuring is you've got to go into an IMF program. That is the only way. The international community accepts nothing less. Right? So same thing with us in the 80s. The only way we could have restructured our debt was that we had to go into an IMF program. So we really watching down the road where we go in. We're not heading into an easy place. Right? And the task ahead is something that's going to be extremely difficult for whether it is the PNM in 2025 or the UNC in 2025, right? You're going to face a situation where you will have no choice but to sit down seriously and start thinking about how do I get out of this middle-income country debt trap, right? And if it's the PNM in 2025, it will be the first time in the history of the PNM that they have to fix a problem that they cause.
And Jwala, let me ask Bhushan to come in here because Bhushan, following on this, Imbert has his own style that, he would use in the parliament and even outside of parliament on the platform, on the hustings. We have not gone to the IMF. Yeah. So, any views that you wish to share at this time, following on from Jwala's?
Well, we have not gone to the IMF and, the credit ratings and so on have been put forward for mileage, political mileage and so on, But when you look at the impact of this, right? For example, I want to deal with you're talking about debt, the VAT refunds. VAT refunds have not been paid because the government cannot afford to pay it, right? They have to be creative in the way they fund, as VAT and income tax refunds have been, put forward like that. The fiscal accounts, the coming to the end of the last financial year into this new financial year, I suspect that a number of debts have not been paid, and they might consider it in the new financial year. And the reason was so that the balances on the current accounts look good. End of the balance is pretty good. So, income tax refunds, VAT refunds, all those sort of things are been put back. But the other thing that I want to touch on here is the unemployment figure. During the budget speech, the minister referred to unemployment at around 3%. And I think that might be a figure that doesn't really accurately reflect the truth. It might be at 3%, but I suspect part of that is underemployment. Underemployment is that you have people working, but they're still not able to make ends meet. Remember, we have this rising inflation. We have imported and domestic inflation, food prices, increase in the price of gasoline and so on. The overall impact of this is, increased cost of living. Even with this rate, we cannot get comfortable. The country or the government cannot get comfortable and think unemployment is at 3%. Because what you're seeing is that you might have the employed, that is the official figure, but the poverty line is gradually rising, right? A lot of people are under that poverty line, underemployment, and those who are underemployed, I don't think they could get a second job, right? So quality of life, cost of living, all of these things are rising, and these are things that we must keep in mind.
Let me just quickly ask, yes.
Before we go into another topic, I want to stay with what Jawala has started off with, the second part, the debt. And the debt is rising, all right? And the reason why I'm asking Jawala, because our revenues, we are not generating the kind of revenues to bring down our debt at a rapid rate. And why is that? Because our energy sector has been faltering and declining over the last 8 years. And we haven't done anything in diversification to make up that revenue shortfall. And that is where the unknown is in our energy sector that we depend still largely on for revenues. And, when the forecast, you talk about the dragon gas, that is still, it's like a pie in the sky sort of thing. You never know, you don't know what Stuart Young signed in Venezuela on September 20th. What did he sign compared to what Rowley signed back in 2018 with Maduro? Is it just a PR job that they're doing? And then now you hear the PR of this government on the manatee. So really and truly, to add to what Jawala is talking about, there's a heavy concern that whoever wins the government in 2025, they have some serious, and I know Jawala doesn't want to say it, maybe the word is austerity measures that we would have to put in place, because the projection is anything that happen in the oil and gas sector would not happen until somewhere in the year 2028, all right? Or unless the price of oil, skyrockets out of the sky and it goes up to $150, and the price of gas hovers up to $10 and $12, which is, the projections are not there. And even our productions are so low that we would not be able to generate the kind of revenues to maintain the sort of debt that Imbert is creating in our country. And they have to run for the next 2 years at least over $60 billion budget. Because they cannot go into election in 2025 not running at least a $60 billion budget for the next 2 years. So our budget expenditure is what? I think 59. And you'll know come mid-year next year, he'll come for another $4 billion. So we'll reach up to about $62 billion. And then the following year is going to be the same thing, his last budget. So we are in some precarious times as a country. So I just wanted to just put that in it.
I appreciate that. There was in recent times, I know we may have discussed this in a panel like this previously. We had the headlines, the dragon dance, or the dragon can dance again. Yeah. And I recall MP Lee, yourself, and MP Paray, both of you were commenting on at that time, the lack of details coming forward from the government in terms of what really was brokered between Trinidad and Venezuela, given that the U.S. had given some, I don't want to use the word concession, but they had given some latitude for us to broker our agreement. Are you all satisfied? This is equally to both of you gentlemen, MP Lee, MP Paray. Are you satisfied with what Minister Imbert has said in this budget in terms of what we can expect or realize from Dragon and Manatee? Do you think, apart from the fact that we will not realize the benefits with some time to come, are you confident in his statements?
I think MP Paray and myself and as opposition, we gas coming to our country from wherever is a good thing for the population, for as a country. In my view, it's still shrouded in secrecy what is going on between us and Maduro. The Manatee, they have a lot of issues there with Shell. And what is telling, and I just put this on the table, that our CARICOM brother, Guyana, is in a situation with Venezuela for territorial dispute. The Essequibo area that is generating a lot of oil and wealth for Guyana. That's an issue that has to impact on even our negotiations, how we deal with Maduro and the U.S. government. So these are some trying times and signals that are happening to us, and we need to add some clarity with this government, or get some clarity from this government, what is really going on between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela.
But, added to that, when you look at Point Lisas, there are a number of plants that are not operating at full capacity, right? We only have 3 trains. The Atlantic Train 1 is shut down, right? You have, a lot of plants are mothballed or operating at reduced capacity, and that, paints a picture by itself as to, the need for more oil and gas. That is a critical sector that needs. Nobody will build a $1 billion plant and operate it at 60% or 70% or mothball it. That doesn't make good economic sense, right? So that paints a picture for you in the energy sector.
There are two questions that's still unanswered concerning Dragon. One, with all the agreements that have been signed, the shroud of secrecy, and I think the government didn't learn anything with the scandals issue that was shrouded in secrecy, and Rowley said no hairy leg crab going to dictate the pace of the government. Well, score 1 for the hairy leg crab. Nobody has said how we're paying Maduro for the gas. Right. The United States government under the OFLAC office have said that no U.S. cash will be passed. But this is taxpayers' money at the end of the day. So that's the first question. Nobody has indicated how we're going to be paying for the gas. Now, Dr. Rowley had said that when this Dragon field comes on stream at 350 million standard cubic feet of gas, it is going to add to the stock in terms of our deficiency, which is about 2.8 billion standard cubic feet of gas, which we're short of on the Point Lisas estate. His pitch to the country at that time, and Stuart said the same thing, that this will fill that gap. But there are 2 media reports out of Venezuela, and one in the international press, and I think Curtis Williams have reported on this as well, that the gas from Dragon will be processed in Trinidad and all exported. So if it is to be exported out of Trinidad, where does that 350 million standard cubic fit into fill in that gap in the Point Lisas industrial estate? So that's for Dragon. And the other issue with all the talk around Manatee has about 4 trillion standard cubic feet of gas that will be available for us. But up to today, Shell has not said that we've signed off on this thing. So they're still in a lot of negotiations between NGC and Shell and so on. And there are a lot of conversations that are happening. So we're talking about 2028, 2029. even northeast of Tobago with the Calypso field, Woodside, that arrangement has not even been sanctioned. And the window for gas is about 5 to 6 years in terms of from the time you get the okay for sanction till you bring first gas. So while there are some pockets of gas that we expect to come in over the next 2 or 3 years, which will probably put us another 400 or 500 million standard cubic feet coming from Touchstone, EOG, and so on, there is nothing substantial on the horizon. And we're still very, very poor in terms of our fiscal arrangement for deepwater exploration. Out of 12 blocks went, only 2 was taken by a BP Shell consortium, compared to 2013 or 2012, when there was an oversubscription, right? So these things must be addressed at a policy level, because we will continue to be a one-trick pony for another 10, 15 years in terms of the gas and oil and energy rents. And if we don't start that process, I mean, the minister labeled this budget as building capacity for diversification. Well, it's 9 years too late. It is 9 years too late. And I remember Dr. Rowley went on a platform and with his normal puppeteering style and, well, diversification, tell all of we go and drink rum and pack up some way. And today, your Minister of Finance come with a book, Mark, building capacity for diversification. These people jokey. They're not serious then.
I must say that the audacity was overwhelming. At the end of his presentation, Minister Imbert said in 2015, we said, let's do this. And he's conceding that in 2023, we are now going to do something. I mean, the audacity was just overwhelming at the end. Gentlemen, let me ask Joala if he wants to contribute anything on this point with Dragon and Manatee.
No, not with Dragon and Manatee, but I wanted to come back to a point that Bhushan made, and he was quite right, and one that we sort of kind of was glossed over in the budget, which is around the cost of living crisis that we're facing. The fact that food price inflation has gone beyond double digits and likely to stay there. The fact that we're going to face rate increases for water, right, for power within the coming year. Right? The fact that I quite rightly again said that there's a large pool of underemployed persons, and the whole issue of managing inflation and the role of the central bank, where it is the central bank that is responsible for inflation control. Right? When inflation is low, the Minister of Finance pats himself on the back. Right? When inflation goes out of hand, he kind of stays quiet and he doesn't say anything. But he's not responsible. It is the central bank. And what has happened is that the central bank's monetary policy stance over the last 8 years has been flawed. It has basically kept its repo rate, which is the rate it uses to manage liquidity in the system, is essentially kept that rate unchanged because it said it wanted to help stimulate the non-energy sector. Well, that's something that we call fiscal dominance, where the fiscal problems are so large and looming that they overshadow the power of monetary policy to do anything but growth. But you could do something about inflation. And you could also do something about protecting the loss of reserves. And that means at some point you got to raise interest rates. Right? That's the only way. We have to start. You see, this is a kind of serious balancing act that we have to think about. Do we continue allowing the reserves to fall, right, to reach that point where gradually everything we talk about foreign exchange shortages will become irrelevant because there's going to be no US dollars in the banks? Or do we really start talking about these institutions that have to seriously take their role on board and do what is best for the economy, not do what is best that the Minister of Finance tells you what to do? So you keep rates basically unchanged for almost 8 years, and we see the effect now. Right? So again, that's a whole other issue around institutions and accountability and governance that I think is extremely important. And there's another part that related to all that we were talking about, on the one side, the underemployment, right? And then you have the other side, what's going on with on the energy sector. And in the middle, there's a whole issue that we need around the NIB, right? That has to be tackled because you have an NIB that is essentially in deficit, then that has to be fixed, right? And quite rightly, I mean, This wasn't a problem that happened under the PNM. As far back as 2013, the PP government, of which the UNC was the majority partner, was quite aware, right, of what that problem was. The first Minister of Finance decided, well, he not going to treat with our problem until he could put it on the agenda and find a white man to solve it. The second Minister of Finance say, that's too hard to do, kick that can down the road, let somebody else deal with it. Well, guess what, folks? We're facing it now. And here what? We now have to face it in the form of an increase in the retirement age, right, by 5 years. When that was a problem that could be solved in 2013, 2014. And by now, 8 years, right, down the road, within a decade, we wouldn't have had this problem.
So, just to chime in here, do you think that the NIB is operating inefficiently, and do you think that their assets, that they have assets that are idle? Do we need to do an audit of NIB to find out the list of assets and examine to see if they are idle or if they are bringing in sufficient returns?
Answer to the first question is yes, they're inefficient. Second question is that audit is actually done when the actuarial review is done. When you read the actuarial review that's done for the NIB, it points you in the direction of all that needs to be done. The thing is, the powers that be, when it reaches by the Minister of Finance, they simply leave it alone, and they're not willing to tackle it. So from the PP days, come straight into PNM, no one has been willing to sit down and say, let us tackle this issue. Right? And here's what's going to add to that. I talked about the debt. Our domestic debt is held by our local banks, our local insurance companies, NIB, UTC. Right? So when you start to talk about, at some point, if you have to restructure your domestic debt, who's going to get hit too? Not your NIB, not your pensioners. Barbados faced that when they did their domestic debt restructuring. Their NIS system took a hit. Pensioners took a hit. Right? Those are, these are things that we have to really, right, realize that at some point we could kick the can down the road only so far, right? We will meet that can at some point in time, and then we wouldn't be able to move it.
Well, I certainly don't want to ignore that NIB issue, and so hopefully we can come back to that some more, to engage in the discussion. I want to tack back, however, just a little. I know, Bhushan, you mentioned the VAT refunds, this whole issue of VAT refunds. Yeah. In a previous program with all of us, except Mr. Rambally, and I seem to recall that we were discussing Minister Imbert sort of giving a timeline and some processes as to how he was going to satisfy all these businesses and ensuring that they are given their VAT refunds. I want to ask Richard, I know you raised it, Busha, but I'll ask Richard. Richard, does the budget in any way whatsoever address the backlog of VAT refunds, the VAT refund claims, and support businesses affected by the delayed VAT refunds? I know that will fall squarely in your sector with the SMEs.
Well, what I observe budget after budget is that we come and the minister comes and he advocate policies over and over. But you don't see report or progressive report on what was achieved. And it is similar with this VAT refund issue. This thing is like a pain in the neck. Remember how the VAT period operates. Every month a VAT period accumulates and a refund is generated every month. So the refund will keep climbing over and over and over. And if he doesn't address the issue, we will have a big problem. Now, he is advocating that the problem with the refund is the energy sector. Because and I heard him say that yesterday, the energy sector is involved 100% on export sales. And once you're exporting, you are zero rated. And that is what is putting the VAT refund to 7 billion, because out of the 7 billion, 6 billion is for the energy sector. And he is also advocating that he's looking at ways of bringing that sector into an exempt supply, where they would not be able to claim a refund. And to me, that would be a difficult scenario, because the policy with VAT all over the world is that once you are exporting and have export sales, it has to be zero rated. It cannot be exempt. So I don't know where he's getting those thoughts and how that is going to be generated in future years coming forward. There is no report because I spoke to several businessmen who are also my clients, and they are not getting the refunds, most of them. So they're asking me, well, I mean, the minister said that we were going to get the refunds in 2 months' time. My understanding is that a system was instituted at the BIR where you have to call the BIR and say, hey, I am business X, and I have 5 refunds, and these are the periods. And they will put you on a list, and then they will try to determine whether you would be entitled to the refund or if you qualify to get that refund, you know. And businesses are struggling, and we don't have a report. I can't say whether, in my mind, it was not addressed in the budget, and I can't say in my mind whether those refunds and the quantum that was paid, because what he advocated in the media review is that anybody under 250,000 would be paid in cash, check. Not much of them got. Then he said everybody over 250,000 would have gotten bonds, right? And we don't know how much bonds was issued. And the major thing there is that where he got the financing, if he did issue bonds to finance those bonds. So, you know, those are questions that has to be asked in the parliament. And I mean, we have 3 member of parliament here, and I hope that they will raise those type of issues. Because this minister is beating his chest and saying that he's dealing with all the issues. But in my simple opinion, I don't think he's dealing with any of the issues, and we are going to have problems. He also said, and I mean, I was really taken aback by this statement, that here now, let me take Jamaica and Barbados, they are under the IMF. Trinidad and Tobago is not under the IMF, and all countries that are not under the IMF, this is what I heard yesterday. Why not carry a debt? We are going to borrow, and we are going to keep borrowing. And when I heard you said that, you know, in 2025, and, you know, I mean, I heard the minister say yesterday that he's going to borrow and keep on borrowing, and we are at 75% of GDP. Are we going to get to 100? How are we going to repay those debt? How are our kids, our generations, future generations going to repay those debts? They are just putting those generations under pressure. And, you know, I mean, that is not far away. So, you know, I was really taken aback by, you know, your statement. So, you know, coming back to the VAT refunds is a continual problem, is a perennial problem. It's just going to keep climbing. And if you don't find a way, the only way to deal with that is do proper accounting, in and out, into the ministry, pay if you have refunds, and you're collecting cash every month.
Richard, let me just jump in there. From what you heard, you see, I go back, I listened to you, and you listened to Imbert at TTMA or wherever he gave his presentation yesterday or day before. And Imbert does that every year. Every time he comes, he changes his tune. He's a snake oil salesman. I started off with that, right? He changes his tune. All the time we have sat last year, we talked about VAT refunds for the past 3 years. He never talked about the energy sector. He never talked about the energy sector being the largest sector that gets the refunds, right?
And
so that tune he comes with a new tune 2 days ago about VAT refunds. So you can't believe anything Nimbut says. And what I have a pet peeve about is that our business chambers, and Jawala could back me up on this, and Rushton, every year Imbut presents a budget. They say great budget. Every year, you know, and I said that last year. And none of them analyze what transpired in the last 12 months. That I have a pet peeve about that. So these pundits and, you know, the experts go out on the next day, Ernst & Young and Price Waterhouse and you know, Coopers, etc. And all the, you know, chambers, great budget, great budget, great budget. But they could never analyze and tell the country, well, you know, the last 12 months you achieved nothing. Because they're afraid about Imbert. I will say that here, that I think these business chambers are afraid of Imbert. They're afraid because you cannot tell me Imbert has, according to Jawala, and we know it, for the last 8 years, the energy sector has not grown. It declined. Deficit upon deficit for the last 8 years. He tinkers with the numbers and he cherry picks the numbers, right? So that Bushan, we talked about the unemployment figure, they quoted it, I think it was 3.7 for the second quarter, as opposed to 4 point something in the first quarter. he picks and he cherry picks these numbers, but CSO cannot give us what is the real GDP for the second quarter, but it could give us what unemployment figures. It's amazing how this government operates with those statistics. And I have a pet peeve about that. So sorry about that.
Right. But what I wanted to ask, right, the pressure for SMEs with VAT is that when we submit the VAT returns, because the way how the system is, we have to pay VAT on money we haven't collected as yet.
Correct.
So every cycle, we take pieces or chunks of our working capital to pay that VAT to the government. And when we do that, we have no money for capital expenditure, we can't expand, we can't invest in new business, new opportunities, we can't hire anybody. Would changing the accounting system help, where you pay the VAT when you receive the payment, in terms of taking off that pressure of losing your working capital? You know, so I bill you for $100,000, the VAT on that is $12,500. When you pay me in 30 days or 60 days and 90 days and I have received that income, I can now add that to send that money back. It's what cash accounting, you know, where you deal at a cash level. Would that help alleviate the problem?
Well, you know, before you go,
get
Java,
free
you
money
know, the law has been orchestrated in such a way that it is very clear that it indicates that the earlier of invoice, payment, or the supply of the goods. So that law has to be changed. So you wouldn't see that. And remember, all taxes are operated in such a way to afford the government cash flow.
Yeah.
Right? So anything that will hamper that cash flow, they would not interfere with. So that is the answer to it.
Yeah, but there's a broader and a deeper issue here beyond, you know, only looking at saying, well, let's find a way and tinker with the, you know, with the VAT system. Is the entire system on non-energy taxation, which is onerous, burdensome, and uncompetitive, and it is extremely difficult in a way that it doesn't provide the kind of liquidity support, right, that a SME will require. Right? Because when you start to look at everything from green fund levy come down the road, it is a system that has to be overhauled. We need a system where taxation is simpler, more broad-based, plug all the leakages. Right? That's really what we want, something simpler. But we've gone back to, and that is where we were in the early 90s. We were starting to clean up.
We were starting
to clean up the system. And I think we've reached that point, you know, the Minister Embert actually kind of alluded to it yesterday when he spoke around the VAT refunds, and he said, well, maybe I need to introduce a sales tax. Yeah, because maybe we really need to start thinking about whether the VAT itself is a proper mechanism, tax mechanism, for an economy like this.
But he went further to analyze that sales tax.
Well,
yeah,
but that was on the top. That was on the top of your head. Yeah. So
he said, if we introduce a sales tax, that's a tax that you will collect at the end. But VAT, the VAT, you collect it on an ongoing basis. It is a progressive tax. So then we would lose our cash flow. So he shoot it down one time.
Yeah, because from a government perspective, right, that making sense for them.
Yeah.
Right, but that don't make sense for the entity that's being taxed, and that is what we have to look at.
Yeah.
Right, and then it's the whole, as I said, it's the entire system of taxation, because we also have the, so the revenue authority is coming in, right, and the revenue authority is touted as it will solve all the problems in terms of collecting tax. Really? Will the revenue authority solve the problem with the VAT refund?
If the VAT refund remains the same, no.
No. It can't.
Yeah.
Right? So it tells you that there is, again, more change, more reform that is needed at a fundamental level. That this is that you have to restructure this economy.
But you know, the effect of this, the effect of the taxation being, the system being complex, onerous, inefficient, the effect of not paying the VAT refunds, the companies can't get their VAT refunds on a timely basis. The effect of this is that the companies themselves, the cost of doing business rises. They have to pay overdraft or finance their cash flow some way or the other. The ease of doing, we keep slipping on that scale. Ease of doing business. You know, this burdensome, when you drop like that, with all of these things, it makes us uncompetitive. It makes us uncompetitive. And that is, it doesn't do much to stimulate growth in the economy. I also wanted to touch one thing that I didn't say earlier when we were talking about the underemployment. The underemployment, when you hear about underemployment, you usually think that is, semi-skilled or unskilled labor. But that is not what is happening right now, You have very skilled labor, university graduates, doctors, right, who are currently unemployed, You come out of med school and you're unemployed. I heard about a few doctors in the state sector. Their contracts had to be broken or, not renewed and so on. And it wasn't about performance. It was about budgeting, right? So, the underemployment is not limited to unskilled labor. It is in the professional class too that you have underemployment.
I would hope that the technocrats who are coming up with these ideas would have a strategic vision in their mind as to what they want to achieve. And the reason why I said that is he gave manufacturing companies that fall within the 30% tax bracket a business levy exemption. Now, business levy is an advanced tax that is credited against your corporation tax liability. So you still have corporation tax to pay. The only way that a manufacturer who is exporting would benefit from that measure is if he is making losses. So that he would not have any corporation tax to pay, and he would have no business levy to pay. And to me, that is almost impossible. Because once you're exporting and you're bringing in, because your gross sales will fall in line with your profit and loss account, which will generate a tax position.
So then you do a snake oil salesman.
So I mean, and he's touting that I am giving the manufacturers and I'm helping manufacturers. Right. But I mean, when you drill down into it, right? When you drill down into the figures, you're not really getting a benefit. And that is why I'm saying the technocrats who are coming up with these ideas, do they really want to help the businesses, or are they just coming up with figures just to?
No, I think it's sound bites.
Yeah.
Let me just give you one more snake oil, right, before we go on. He keeps touting that we are the only Caribbean island that has not gone to the IMF. We have not gone to the IMF. But if you read the last Article 4 report, there are about 4 or 5 areas that the IMF insists that we must do. Now, while we have not gone to the IMF, but we are following IMF dictates. Revenue authorities and IMF dictate. Rationalizing of the Water and Sewage Authority and water rates is an IMF dictate. The RIC and the power, the electricity rates, is an IMF dictate. But they put it smoothly in their reports that in order to get your rating and your good performance, the government, we strongly insist that the government pursue these things. So a lot of these things in the report, that Article 4 report, where they are suggesting, we are doing it. So in smart as the snake oil, as the chief is saying, we are implementing IMF policies quietly.
A shadow program.
Of course. So again, that is the dishonesty that we are dealing with in this country. And I tell you, trust is our big issue. And if we cannot trust the leadership of this country to be honest, even if the honesty requires harsh words, harsh commentary, then I think people will value you. And I think that is the issue that is pervading all our services, from the police come right back. If we can't raise the level of trust, then we can't start fixing anything. So snake oil right through.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard it right here in Chaguanas West post-budget discussion forum. Minister Imbert is a snake oil con job salesman. So that is the sum total up to this point in time. Gentlemen, I want to move on to an issue which Minister Imbert totally ignored. We have only so far skirted around it. I'm referring to the Forex crisis. I hope we can just touch on that a little bit. I would, however, want to go to a break because I want to negotiate an extra half an hour in this program. There's no way that we are concluding this program without talking about crime. I think the people want to hear about that. So I would like to take a break. Hopefully we touch on Forex crisis and we deal with the issue of crime, and I will be able to get the extra half an hour. Ladies and gentlemen, We will try, just after the break, I will confirm, but we will try to get this program extended to 9:30. Gentlemen, are you all beyond your bedtime if we go to 9:30, or can we? We normally go to sleep early. So we take the break now and we'll return. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Join us just after the break.
What you need to know, it's your business. As the world's economy evolves, what you need to know, it's your business. Keeping an eye on business and informing you on its happenings, it's our business. Eye on Business on radio and TV Jagriti, weekdays at 9 a.m.
My dear devotees, Sitaram, the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago guarantees equality of treatment of all our citizens. This has not always been adhered to. We have often gone to court for these rights. Now we have radio and television to speak out and Mukdar to strike out.
Tune in every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. drive time. The Mahasabha will strike back. Sitaram.
Hey my friends, you are invited to join us on radio and TV Jagriti with Mrs. Sharda Maharaj every Thursday from 4 p.m. right here on your number one. Inspirational, enlightening and uplifting. Ek Saath with Mrs. Sharda Maharaj on radio and TV Jagriti Thursdays at 4 p.m.
As we at Radio and TV Jagriti continue to emphasize the importance of creating healthy and happy families, it's our pleasure to present to you the program Hamare Sukhi Parivar, Our Happy Family, every Monday from 12:15 to 1 p.m. with our Dharmacharya of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, His Holiness Pandit Dr. Ramprasad Parasram. Pandit Dr. Ramprasad Parasram is an experienced psychiatrist and former chief medical officer who has had a long history in the line of social work. Join with him as he shares and discusses issues and ideas on improving and enhancing family life every Monday from 12:15 to 1 p.m. live on the Jagriti Network. Sitaram.
Hate rats. Your child's safety is top priority.
Hi, Miss Silly. Thanks a mille. I'll be back by 10. Bye, T.
Be very cautious when choosing a caregiver. Don't let this be your horror story.
A message from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
The Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West presents a post-budget panel discussion to be held on Wednesday, 4th October 2023 from 7 to 9 p.m. on radio and TV Jagriti. Panelists will include MP for Pointe-a-Pierre David Lee, MP for Mayara Rushton Paray, economist Dr. Bhujan Singh, former Central Bank Governor Jawala Rambaran, financial accountant Richard Ramkisoon, hosted by MP for Chaguanas West Dinersh Rambally. Do tune in to this most important discussion live on radio and TV Jagriti.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us and continuing to join in our discussion. We are hearing it live from our expert panelists here tonight. I want to thank them again as we move on and we venture forward. The next topic, as I indicated just before the break, I would like to touch on is the Forex crisis. I want to indicate to my panelists, of course, that I would like to start with our former Central Bank Governor, Jawala Rambaran, followed by Dr. Bhujan Singh, then Richard Ramkisoon. And the reason for that is because I want to let our professional or our more professional technocrat-based gentlemen speak on it first. And then I go to my colleagues because I see MP Lee and MP Paray. They fired up now. During the break, I could see they fired up, and they really have some pounding for him. But if you didn't hear it in their tone before, you're going to hear it now. So let me start off with Jawala. Jawala, this Forex crisis, let me see. I don't wish to put it in context. I think the people over the last maybe two weeks, you know, with the reduction with Republic Bank, and that was just maybe the last in line, that you would have seen the reduction in the credit card access to Forex and what have you. Based on the budget, has the government given any indication, you know, any remote indication that they will implement something, or something is in train to ensure a steady supply of foreign exchange, which of course is essential to imports and businesses?
All right, thanks. Let me quote from page 34 of the budget, just one line, and it shows you the power and the strength of the Minister of Finance. Now, quoting the liner, this is what he's saying: I am stabilizing and strengthening the foreign exchange market. Man sounds like he's He-Man, right? Master of the universe. And this was the same attitude the minister had back in 2015 when in his first budget speech he actually said, and if you go back and you look at it, that he would solve the foreign exchange problem. Right? So 8 years later, as I say, we don't have a foreign exchange problem. Not that he solved it. We have a foreign exchange crisis. Right? Because what has happened? Since then to now, the central bank has sold $10 billion to commercial banks to on-sell to the general public. Right? $10 billion. Yet we continue to hear people talk about the fact that when they go to the banks, well, the most I could give you is $200. Right? We hear the SMEs, continuously over the last 8 years complaining. Right? So the question is, where has this $10 billion gone? Well, the issue is really the foreign exchange distribution system that we have, and that was the system that I was attempting to reform. Right? Because this is a system that essentially takes 80% of the foreign exchange that is sold, and it gives it to 20% of the market. Right? And that 20% of the market, for want of a better term, is what we would call it the 1%. But it's a little 1% and a little broader. Right? But essentially the thing is, nearly most of the foreign exchange just simply goes to a small component in the market. And therefore, the rest of the market has to fight up for this demand. And that is why I was attempting to change the system, because that system today is now 30 years old. Right? You have to step back and think, you have a system that is 30 years old. Clearly, it must be in need of reform. It must be in need of upgrade, because it's a system that has gone through at least 3 different cycles in the economy. Right? And therefore, change has to happen. But it's a dinosaur dysfunctional system that we continue to try and operate within, and the minister says he'll solve the problems that way. Right? Excuse. The issue is this: even if the exchange rate moved 10-1 tomorrow, there is no guarantee that you would still get foreign exchange as you want under a dysfunctional distribution system. That is a system that has to be solved first and foremost, and then you could start thinking about what might be the most appropriate level of the exchange rate. So I'll leave it there.
Let me just say following on from this functional distribution system, before we go on to Bhushan, ladies and gentlemen, I have just gotten communication that management will allow the additional half an hour so we can take our time to deal with this Forex crisis, and we will be addressing crime certainly between the 9 to 9:25 period. So Bhushan, let us continue.
So, 2 things. Following from Jawala, the distribution system is one. But I want to add to this, and I think that it is also a confidence problem. And, people are paying as much as 8-1 on the street, it is for US dollars and so on. The people who have US accounts in Trinidad and Tobago, they're getting very little to zero if they have it in the bank, right? But they still have it as a store there because, they want the US if they want access to it or as a hedge. So it is also a confidence problem that people are trying to hoard US. And there's another part of this, that hasn't been fully addressed in the budget. And that is you have the unbanked. You have a large section of the population that is unbanked. It is very difficult to open a bank account. And this section of the population have to work on cash, right? Whether it is TT cash or US cash or whatever it is. And, this leads to the informal economy, right? And, I think this too is something that must be addressed. We're trying to go to a cashless system, right? But the fact of the matter is that, if people don't have confidence in dealing, they're going to find a way to move around, right? To get past that system. And I think, a critical issue with Forex is people trying to hoard as a hedge because they think that holding the TT dollar is not a good long-term investment. So you want some type of hedge. So you have your US accounts in the bank, you're getting virtually 0% interest, but you prefer to do that than to hold a TT dollar account.
I just try to look at these things in a simple way and how it affects businesses. I mean, there is a supply of US dollars in this country. But the price is between $7.25 to $8. There is. You can get it on the outside. The problem that occurs, and a lot of people are tapping into that, there are two sources that are tapping into, besides the bank, that 20% that we talk about, The problem that occurs is that if a business goes out there and buys 10,000 US, because he has to pay his suppliers. Remember, we are not working in a globe, in a balloon, in a bubble. We are dealing with the global trade, and we need to deal with people and we need to pay our suppliers. What does the bank tell this businessman? Where you get at US, and we're not accepting it. Not even $2, not even $200, and they're not accepting it. So you immediately puts the businessman under pressure because you are not giving him US dollars. The second thing is that there are a lot of people who have US dollars on the outside, and they are asking local businessmen, and this is a fact. They are asking local businessmen, hey, you want US? I have 100,000 US. I have 200,000 US. But how that US is coming back into your bank account to send to your suppliers? They have to wire transfer that money from the US or wherever the money is back into your US account they're trying to build. You have to go through the bank again. The bank puts up this wall, and you have to go through, like you commit a major crime. They know where the money coming from, but you have to go through where you get the money from, one FIU, one set of issues that you face. So there are US dollars out there, and we know what are the reasons why there's a shortage. I mean, the minister is not saying it, but low energy prices. Over the last couple of years, even since COVID, prices of goods abroad, because we are basically an import economy, has gone up by at least 5 or 6%, even 10% in some businesses. So the same number of goods that a businessman in Trinidad is importing, the same number, he has to pay more. He has to demand more US dollars because the price, there's an inflationary growth all over the world. How are we dealing with that? So the businessman, we know that, and that could lead to a shortage also. So we know what the issues are, but how are we going to solve it? So you have businessmen now trying in all different directions to access this US to pay, because they have to pay the suppliers. There's so much that a supplier will give you credit for. At some point he will say, hey, I have to pay my bills also, So you need to find a way to access. Businessmen know what they are doing. I mean, I'm not afraid to say it, what they are doing. Rushton has a credit card and me and you are friends. I come and asking you to pay a bill for me. And my deposit $750 in your account instead of, because you pay it, you had $680. Why are you pushing businessmen into all these because businessmen are trying to survive in this economy. If they don't do these issues, they would not survive. They would have to close. Then you have the ripple effect of unemployment growing. You have families suffering. I mean, these are the reality. And this is my peeve with the technocrats. Are they looking at these things and they're trying to solve these issues? And they know about it. It's not that they don't know, I mean, they are socializing and they are business partners and they are saying the same thing, So how are we going to solve it?
Let me jump in here. Let me first say that Imbert can't solve the forex crisis that Jawala used, and it is a crisis. Jawala talked about the central bank over a period pumped in $10 billion US. And especially in the last few years, our energy sector that's supposed to put back in that US dollar into the system, the shortfall is met by central bank. That funding from the energy companies, they don't see the confidence in our country. They're not reinvesting. They're not putting back money into our system, and that is why we have this great shortfall constantly over the last few years. Now, the crisis that we are suffering now for Forex, it didn't start yesterday. It has been building over the last 8 years under Imbert. All right? I mean, $200 you can only get when you're traveling is not yesterday. It has been going on for years, but at least for the last 5 years that I can recall. And every year, the banks have been cutting back on what you can use as US when you go abroad. And Joe Alla and I, we worked at Central Bank. We remember ECO and EC1 days. To me, I think we back to those days. Huh? I think we coming back to those days, ECO and EC1 days. And under that regime, at that point, why it was difficult and you had to line up, and you would know it, business people used to get it. We can't even get access. Business people cannot access foreign exchange today, right? No, that's for the personal individual. You used to get 1,200 TT, I think, was that point in time. So when you go to the book in the budget, and I just want to add to what Jawala said. He read one line, but I want to read a line here. Now, this is from Imbert, about the foreign exchange. I expect to be able to implement a new SME Forex facility within the next 6 months, which should reduce the demand for sales of foreign exchange using credit cards. So he agreed that the business sector, the only way that they've been able to survive was utilize credit cards, right? So he is saying within the next, but he's a snake oil salesman again. So he hasn't solved our forex crisis over the last five or 8 years since he has been in charge. In 6 months he's going to solve it? It's not going to happen. But it's words and nice words, and he'll come and do a song and dance and these chambers, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I just want to quickly add, because as you spoke about the EC0, right? The EC0 and the EC1 back in the 80s, you know what that was? That was a sign of a government that had no idea what to do.
Correct.
Right? And they just kept tampering, right, with the foreign exchange system. Because at that point, if you remember, we also end up with a preferential rate. And
Correct.
see if inside there you do see the word preferential.
That's right.
As well, right? A two-tier system, right? And that in itself is what generated the massive, right, loss of confidence and capital flight. And why our reserves just kept falling and falling, spiraling. Because they knew the PNM government at that time, the Chambers government, had no idea how to solve the foreign exchange problem, right? And they were just rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. We are seeing that today, right? We are seeing that today, and I started off the discussion talking about Minister Imbert also talking about foreign currency repatriation. That is a sign of a government that has no clue. No economic clue about what to do foreign currency repatriation. That is 1960s words. That is not for 2023.
That does not add confidence.
Yeah, that does not add confidence. And again, I come up to the point, where the business chambers, are their tails between their legs? Not one single business chamber has stood up and said, what do you mean by foreign currency repatriation? Are you going to take my hard-earned foreign currency right, my US dollars and give me TT dollars, right? That is where the chambers have to get up and demand an explanation.
Well, he expatiated that point yesterday, and what he said, what he said there in the budget, he went on further to clarify what he meant there. What he meant, because he said it yesterday, and all the businessmen were sitting there and they clapped. What he meant is that if he injected $2 billion of FX into the economy, 1.3 billion is going to these commercial banks, and the other 700,000 is going to Exim Bank. But if you're an exporter, you cannot access that $700,000 unless you sign some contract or document where you have to repatriate the sales back.
But that is the same thing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, he put in a formality into it now. And that is what is going to be difficult.
This is a country that has had no capital controls for 30 years. We've gone back then to the days of capital controls. We've gone back straight to 1980s. That is what he's saying.
A difficult scenario.
Yeah. And the business community applauding that.
They applauding that.
Then they deserve this thing that they get.
I just want to chime in very quickly. I know we're running closely to 9 o'clock, so I won't go beyond 5 minutes on this. The impact for SMEs. I have businesses in that sector, and we've been struggling. Our family businesses have been struggling for years to get Forex. Now, a lot of small business, you need your credit cards, you need your Forex to buy goods and services. We are an importing economy, we're buying everything. But here is the impact for SMEs when we can't purchase goods. We cannot get the goods to sell, we have to start laying off people. When we get to the point that you can't keep your employees, you have to close the business down. But understand this, SMEs are family businesses. They form the backbone of communities. A family business is where you go to and get credit for the fortnight. You go and you get credit to buy shoes and uniforms sometime and books and the Chinese shop and so on long time. When these businesses collapse, you are interfering with the fabric of the strength of your communities. Small businesses sponsor football. They sponsor cricket. They are the inertia for the best performers, our athletes, because they have to learn in the community. They have to be trained, like how Richard has his camp, the camps that you have. If businesses can't support those things, it has that ripple effect going on. And you are talking about SMEs being the backbone of all economies. Let us not bring some stability to that SME sector. 200,000 people, right? 25,000 businesses. Up to now, we have figured out which is the 6,000 that collapsed during COVID. We've done nothing to find out how do we bring them back on stream. And all this thing about contract and requirement and means test. The vast majority of small businesses in this country, some of them have no BRI file number, who hiring 4 and 5 people in a little community to do fast food, restaurant business and so on. A lot of people in the last 5 to 10 years are doing roving businesses and so on. As small as they are, they're hiring 4 people, 3 people in the kitchen, 2 persons to wash wells. So money is being spent, it's helping local economies. When you start to stifle SMEs, which are family businesses, it starts to interrupt the fabric of your local society, and it interferes with contributions to the social impact issues, little lines of credit and so on for families who have to wait 2 and 3 weeks to get a pay. When CPEP has to pay in a fortnight, you go buy some of these SMEs and you take goods on credit, you take food on credit. If we allow these things to continue collapsing, and we spoke about capital flight, we talk about the crime issue we will talk just now. If that adds on to the stresses for SMEs, and these people say, look, the best thing for me, look, let me get out of this place. And we sell properties and we close the business down, we have a run on our banking system, we have a collapse of the real estate market, we are going to head down the route of Haiti, and we could be heading there very, very fast if fundamental structural changes is not made. And I don't expect it to be made anytime soon because, Imbert has no idea, he has no desire to go down that road. And that, to me, is where the true impact of this SME and the Forex issues in terms of buying. And even if it's not the SME that needs the Forex, the supplier who is supplying these small businesses in Mayaro, in Guayaguayari, in Biche, they need the Forex to buy the goods. So it has that ripple effect, and I think that is disastrous for business and local economies, and especially rural communities. And one last thing, you all mentioned about, you talked about whether the technocrats understand what's happening. I'm sad to say the technocrats live north of the lighthouse. They make decisions north of the lighthouse, along that east-west corridor. They don't understand life in rural communities. They don't understand life in Rio Claro, in Mayaro and Beach. When you make certain decisions that make sense north of the lighthouse, it suffers people in rural communities. And I think that is the problem we have with our technocrats. When the government says, look, this is what I want, during the COVID, they shut banks down, banks shut down. We had one bank for 30,000 people in Mayaro. One bank. But on the corridor, you have 15 banks on the stretch. So if 2 closed down or 3 closed down, it had about 5, 6, 7 remain. We had to deal with one. And when I made a complaint about that in the media, I get a call from Republic Bank. Why are you getting on so? Yeah, I tell you, they call me. Paray, why are you getting on so? And that is what I'm saying. They don't understand how rural communities work, the dynamics of work, because these decisions are made north of the lighthouse, with the greatest of respect to the government.
I just want to add one. You mentioned, you made a very important point where you spoke about real estate. And when you look at the real estate market, let me just take Port of Spain, for example. If you look at Port of Spain, there are a number of buildings that are up for sale. And they have been up for sale for quite a while now, more than a year, 2 years, 3 years plus. I know of one that is on right on Independence Square, where McDonald's used to be. I think that's 6 years on the market. Yes, right? I was about 6 years on the market. And, that was unheard of once upon a time. And there's another thing too. And so, a lot of areas there, properties are not for sale. They can't offload them. And even residential areas, some residential areas, West Moorings and so on, there are properties that were once selling for 8 million, and the price is now, the market value is now 4 million. And to add to that, some might have been sold, but the people who took a mortgage at 8 million and your property value is now 4 million, you're paying an overvalued mortgage, right? Suppose they decide, like in the US when they had the collapse, here, it's not worth me paying this mortgage. Here, look, the bank, look, the keys for the property. Yeah.
It's the 1980s again.
Right? Yeah. Suppose they say, look, this mortgage is overvalued. Here, hold on to the keys. Yeah, you take it. And the banks become real estate companies then. That's a serious thing, right? Now, that is telling you about the confidence in your economy, right? That is telling you about the confidence in your economy. And it's happening, the capital city is falling apart, right? That is to begin with.
Gentlemen, let's just take a very short break. MP Paray, I know in the beginning of the program you said you wanted to touch on crime, so maybe 8 minutes or so if you can give your comments, and followed by MP Lee, and then we will let the technocrats get the minority, saying that they only believe north of the lighthouse, right? So we let them get that. They only believe in what happens in north of the lighthouse.
I live north of the lighthouse.
Oh, well, we will have to cut down your time too. We will have to cut back your time. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a little break now, just about a few seconds, and then we'll get back into crime as we conclude this post-budget discussion forum.
I am Ramnaresh Dwarika, inviting you to the program Addiction and Recovery, where we discuss issues relating to alcoholism and drug addiction. Be you an active user or in recovery? Tune in every Thursday at 9 a.m. This is an interactive program, and you can call 663-1027 or 663-2335, where we can interact. Join me, Ramnaresh Dwarika, for the program Addiction and Recovery, every Thursday at 9 a.m.
Join me, Harold Nabry, every Saturday afternoon from 4 for the program Suhana Safar right here on your favorite station, TV Jagriti. Suhana Safar, a program that goes behind the scenes, relives the pleasant memories and enjoy the modern music. I will explore the various aspects of the Indian film industry and celebrate with the players of this vast industry. You will hear some ghazals, bhajans, semi-classical music, and we'll also look at the history and development of the Indian music world. That's Suhana Safar every Saturday from 4 p.m. right here on your favorite station, TV Jagriti.
Sitaram, I am Sharvani Sukhai, inviting you to be a part of my television sensation, Bollywood's Best on TNT's Best TV Jagriti. Tune in every Sunday morning from 10 to 11 as together we count down the top 10 biggest and best Bollywood videos of the week, check out the latest movie previews, and of course, what's trending with your favorite Bollywood celebrities. It's the only of its kind on national television, so don't miss it. Bollywood's Best every Sunday morning from 10 to 11, exclusive to TV Jagriti.
The Member of Parliament for Chaguanas West presents a post-budget panel discussion to be held on Wednesday, 4th October 2023 from 7 to 9 p.m. on radio and TV Jagriti. Panelists will include MP for Pointe-a-Pierre David Lee, MP for Mayara Rushton Paray, economist Dr. Bhujan Singh, former Central Bank Governor Jawala Rambaran, financial accountant Richard Ramkisoon, hosted by MP for Chaguanas West Dinersh Rambally. Do tune in to this most important discussion live on radio and TV Jagriti.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us. We just have about 25 minutes remaining in the program. Crime affecting the population, spiraling crime, heinous crimes being committed, crimes against women, children and senior citizens being, largely vulnerable or mostly vulnerable. These are all understatements. In fact, I think the population has become quite desensitized to what is taking place in the country. Maybe that is a deliberate act on the part of the government. But to address this issue more, let me hand over to MP Rushton Paray, who I know both MP Paray and MP Lee are quite passionate on this issue because they have constituents who are affected by crime. They have persons throughout the different constituencies who are being affected by crime, and so they wish to address this matter. MP Paray, specific initiatives, if any, that you would have detected in the budget, purported initiatives detected in the budget, the fiscal package statement that you think would make any positive impact on crime. I leave it at large for you to address this matter.
So there were two key issues raised in the budget statement by Minister Imbert in terms of addressing the issue of crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. One was the recruitment of 1,000 recruits. 1,000 recruits. So he wants to put, probably over the next 6 to 12 months, 1,000 more boots on the ground. And two, there has been an $80 million allocation to buy more vehicles. So I just want to stop it there for 1 second. Over the last month, now while my constituents in Mayaro have had to deal with murders, home invasions, predial larceny in a big way. It is crime. Thieving, dashing, and avocado is a crime. People may not see it as a crime. But when these farmers put their blood and sweat into their field, and you mosey along inside and rip off the people's produce, that is a crime. The issue for me, and having two recent friends and families who were involved in home invasions where they were beaten and robbed, it brought the message closer to home for me. Now, those two things that Minister Imbert spoke in the budget, neither of those two things solves the problem of trust in the TTPS. Would put in 1,000 officers on the road more raise trust in the TTPS? That's the question, first question. Would put in $80 million worth of vehicles and equipment, raise the trust level between the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the TTPS? Well, my answer is no. We are being terrorized in this country. We are living under a terrorist threat by the criminals in this country. And yet, these citizens are afraid to go to the charge room and make a report. They are afraid to become a victim themselves because they feel that when they make a report to the police, there are elements in the police that has connections and it comes back to them. And the issue here is one of trust. And while I agree that we need tough legislation, we need to get to the point where we need to have tough legislation to deal with some of these issues. We need to use technology. We need to throw technology at the society. But that is only fixing the societal part. Or we are trying to control behavior. But if we don't address the operators of the criminal justice system, the people who participate in the process from intelligence to evidence to prosecution to prisons, there are players inside it who are operators of the system. And if we don't address the problems of the operators, I don't care how much legislation you throw, how much technologies you throw at it, how much CCTV camera, how much ankle bracelet, how much face recognition, if we don't fix the simple matters of the operators. Let me give you an example. How do you build trust in the TTPS? The citizens feel like have more bandits in the TTPS than good fellas. Because there's no swift justice against police officers who have gone rogue. We have about 500 police officers who are before the courts today. Before the courts. And they are there 5, 8, 10, 12 years before the courts and they are getting pay. The citizens feel that there is a misuse there, that there's no trust there. We need swift justice. And if there's swift justice for those who have to uphold the law, then there is confidence back into the service. We have a problem of high absenteeism of police officers. Sometimes you need 10 officers on a shift in a police station Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And on Friday night, 3 officers turn up. 7 of them call in sick. While there may be officers who are not well, seriously not well, and they can't come up. But 7 on a shift not turning up in the night. That is an abuse. We are spending $50 to $80 million a year on overtime in the TTPS. What is the value for money in that overtime? Are we putting 20% more patrols out on the road? Are we seeing more foot patrols? Are we utilizing SRPs to do more duties? Have we seen a reduction in certain crimes in certain areas based on $80 million overtime? I use that as an example of we're not dealing with the issues of the operators. We talk about in 2016 that $80 million Chinese money was going to build a new forensic science center for us. In 2023, all the state have done is put on a 40-foot container to store samples. So we can't get ballistics in a good time frame. We have officers retiring because 3 years, 4 years before samples, DNA samples. We had a fisherman whose body was returned from Venezuela. 3 of them died, 4 of them died when the boat overturned. It took 6 months, it was only last week the family got the body. Because the DNA sample took 6 months and the DNA sample didn't have to go away now. It was right here. It took 6 months before we could have released the body to the family to have closure. That is something we must address. And if we can address the operators, night courts, swift justice for police officers who have gone rogue, we have to find methods of fixing the operators to lift the trust. And if we don't lift the trust amongst the operators, right, then we're not going to solve the crime problem in this country because there is no synergy between the citizens and the operators of the system. So these 2 initiatives that Minister Imbert talked about on Monday, it is not going to do anything to deal with that. And I would have thought that coming in, and I mentioned this in my opening, that the 2 critical issues in this country today is crime and the economy spirals into jobs and so on. And I thought the budget should have been anchored on those 2 things. Every single item in terms of taking the country as a policy position going forward should have been to attack the issue of crime, deal with the operators, and if you deal with crime, you start strengthening the business environment. Businesses are closing. I remember many years ago, 6 o'clock you drive through Chaguanas, the place bustling, traffic jam. Today, 5:30 you could drive through Chaguanas sometimes. Businesses already closed, you know. So to me, the state must address those things, work with the issues of operators. You know, DPP complains all the time that he don't have enough staff, right? You have some shortage in the police service, but the shortage could be of a bad system of managing things like absenteeism, you know, punctuality, simple disciplinary issues, you know. Fingerprinting, the DPP came before a joint select and says it's the first time in his career that he's seen case files coming before him with no fingerprint evidence. He says that is unnatural in terms of how these things work. So again, if we want to start that process, we need to, yes, look at legislation. I know the political leaders put forward 7 or 8 or 10 pieces of pieces of suggestions for legislation. I do hope the government is genuine in their interest to collaborate. And as I said in a letter to the editor the other day, we have always supported good legislation. We'll continue to do so. And we will support good legislation in this matter. We hope the government is genuine in it. I think if there is anything that came out of the budget and this issue on crime, is that, you know, they are out of ideas. I think Minister Ethelbert, I think he's clueless as to what to do. I think the government is clueless as to what to do to deal with this matter of crime. And perhaps they're waiting for a white man to come back and solve it for them. You understand? So that's my take on the issue of crime and what was presented in the budget on Monday.
I sincerely appreciate MP Paray, your overview. I know you have a lot more to say on it, because it is a big issue that affects all of us and our constituents. MP Lee.
Yeah. Well, let me start off by saying I agree with everything my colleague said in respect of his opinion of where we are in crime and so forth and what should be done. I just want to add a couple of things before I hand over. And it comes back to really the snake oil salesman we have as a Minister of Finance.
Gentlemen, I think we have something. I don't know if the technical team has something to put up for us on the screen. There's something. Not yet. They said not yet. Let's go on.
And the callousness of this government that led by Prime Minister Rowley and to a greater extent, Minister of Finance. And if you go to page 117 of his budget statement, now, Imbert took 3 hours before he got to the part on crime, right? And crime is a very serious issue in our country. And I just want to show you the callousness of Imbert. Imbert's budget statement on safety and crime on page 117. And I quoted him. In 2015, the number of murders recorded was 420, rising to 605 in 2022, accounting for 4.7% of serious crimes. And now I want to stick a pin there. This is his statement. Then he goes on and says, the incident of murder is running at about the same level in 2023. So right away, this government has given you a figure is going to be over 600 murders at the end of 2023. Now, he is also going on to say, in serious crimes, robbery accounted for 2,516 or 20% of serious crimes. Firearms and ammunition accounted for 9.1% of serious crimes. Break-ins and burglaries account for 13.5% of serious crime. And he's saying murders only account for 4.7% of serious crimes. So he's telling the country in his budget statement, murders is only, don't worry about the number, it's only account for 4.7% of serious crimes. To me, that tells me the callousness of this government, right? So one murder is one too many. But 600 murders is only accounts for 4.7% of serious crimes. So that tells me, where we are with this government. You see how this government can't fix the foreign exchange crisis? They cannot fix what is happening in our country in solving or bringing down the issues of what we are rampant in our country in the crime, whether it is break-ins and burglaries, whether it is murders, robberies, home invasion, etc. And today it really broke my heart, and when we attended the funeral of MP Dinersh Singh's mother, I had the pleasure of, I wouldn't say the pleasure, but I met an individual, a gentleman, who attended the funeral, and he was the father of the young man who got murdered in a home invasion, who worked at Central Bank. And I didn't even know I knew the guy, the gentleman, but I met him at the funeral. And, you know, it was very sad. The newlywed, you know, his wife was a lawyer, right? And they broke into their home and he tried to defend his wife, and he was murdered and shot in his head. And that is the level of crime and murders in our country. And that is where this government has brought us to in the past 8 years. So, you know, I agree with everything my colleague has said of crime. The same issues he have in Mayara, the same issues we have in all our constituencies. Nothing is different. It impacts everybody, right? And this government is clueless in trying to deal with the rampant crime that we have in our country. So that is what I would like to say, my part on that.
All right, gentlemen, in the interest of time, and I really appreciate both MPs speaking on this issue of crime. In no particular order, but maybe I will start with the center first. I want to start wrapping up, and maybe each one of you can keep your concluding remarks to, you know, a minute and a half to 2 minutes. Joala Rambaran, your concluding remarks.
All right, sure, yeah. I'll brief. I just want to take you guys back in times to 40 years ago, to the late 1980s, where we had similar economic conditions prevailing then. The only difference is that today we had to deal with runaway crime and we had to deal with a refugee situation, which creates a more volatile social mix added on to the economic problems. The other similarity, aside from the economic conditions, is that we have a PNM administration. Back then, they were fiddling while Rome burnt, and I think, well, I think we passed the fiddling. As I've said, is a prime minister that prefers economic geometry to economic strategy, and it's really it's still effectively an engineer who attempts to play economist, and that's why we see in the situation that we're in. And just to remind you, by December 1986, the electorate was totally frustrated, voted out the PNM after 30 successive years in power. The NAR came in, but the economic conditions were so deep and difficult that by the time they came in, they had no choice but to approach the IMF. And I leave it with that.
Well, I think, you know, overall, businesses and individuals are going to have to try to become more efficient. Crime, as we were just talking, has made the cost of doing business rise significantly. It has reduced consumer confidence. It has reduced investor confidence. And, you know, I mean, imagine having a security cameras in your house and security systems, and that has now become part of the landscape. That has now, you know, that is you know, telling you, you know, a serious concern. And every time you have to do that, look at the amount of money that is spent in crime fighting measures by the government and by citizens, security systems, trying to get firearms, trying to look at all. We talk about foreign exchange. Look at the amount of foreign exchange is wasted on all of that. Look at the amount of time and effort, and all of this is, you know, increasing increasing your cost of living, reducing your quality of life. And I think going forward, citizens are going to have to find some mechanism to become more efficient, because these are all of these things now, security cameras and all of these things have now become part of your basket of goods that you have to buy to live comfortably. It's not just about bread and cheese and eggs, and is security cameras and all that sort of thing.
Richard.
The citizenry is living in fear. Business people are living in fear. And instead of we take our retained earnings and invest it in the economy and invest it in our business to generate more profits or cash flows and employ more people, we are taking that money to spend on securing our families and premises and our businesses. And that, to me, is a waste of an investment. MP Parrott spoke about confidence in the police service. And on Beyond the Tape this evening, it was mentioned that Monday, a young lady left her job at 10 o'clock in the night and attempted to take a taxi, took the taxi, and she was taken to a remote area, and the driver attempted to rape her, but he assaulted her, and she fight, and she got away, and she went to some home and made a call, and the police came. And all the police did was interview her and drop her back by the taxi stand to go home. That is what was on Beyond the Tape this evening, and that has no confidence in the police service. A woman was just assaulted. You see the bruise all over her body, and you did not look to carry the woman to the police station and interview her and then try to secure her, because she's already traumatized. And that is the confidence that you are talking about that the population does not have in the police service. And I'll end here.
MP Lee.
Again, thank you, Dinesh. And as I end, as I reviewed the budget statement presented Monday by the Minister of Finance, and his team is building capacity for diversification and growth, I have seen nothing there that gives me any confidence that coming for the next 12 months of my life, of our lives, that will be any better off than we are today. Doesn't give me any confidence in the growth of this country under this present government. I think they have run out of ideas, they are bankrupt on ideas and vision to carry our country forward.
Thank you, MP Lee. MP Parry, you are coming from the furthest distance. I give you the last floor.
Well, the pain for me is that I don't think any of us sitting in the parliament and the citizenry wakes up in the morning and says, look, we want a government to fail, because when a government fails, we are all impacted, our business, our family, our children. But it really is sad when year after year, you have an organization called the Government of Trinidad and Tobago that keeps missing the ball, missing the cue, because they remain disconnected from the people. When you can have a Minister of Public Utilities, when asked why the people in Union don't have water for 30 days, and you ask him, what's the problem for that? He said, that is for WASA to respond, not him. You are the Minister of Public Utilities and you've disconnected yourself from the realities of the people. And the entire government has done that. So every single thing in this document has nothing to do with the people and how it affects my auntie and my uncle in the communities in Bish, in Navet, in Jairam Trace, in Ecclesville. This means nothing to them. And unless we can reconnect back these statements to impact the lives of the ordinary citizen, we just wasted 137 pages of good paper, good tree. And I know if we had more time, Joala would have spoken more about the issues around climate and climate change, the importance of green. But we'll leave that for another conversation. So thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our thoughts. And I look forward to another invitation soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Let me, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude this post-budget discussion, I have been receiving a lot of WhatsApp messages, gentlemen. I know persons have said, what about property tax? Impending, increases in utility rates. What is the situation with WASA and TNTEC rates? That seems to be something that we can expect in the next year to be, suggestions from RIC and the other appropriate personnel. How is it likely that we will be suffering from a food shortage, if not within the next fiscal year, whether anytime soon? I have received issues, people are saying, well, what about diversification? Did the budget really go in any direction that you could say, well, there was diversification? Agriculture, what is the position with farmers? Rushton, I know you mentioned Preja Lassini in your contribution with crime, and I think a couple others would have mentioned tonight. How does the budget affect the average householder? I want to tell you that my apologies that we were not able to capture all of those items or issues in our discussions tonight. But I want to give the population the assurance that the Honorable Political Leader, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, leading the opposition, of course, Chief Whip MP David Lee, MP Rushton Paray, a senior MP, and my MP colleagues, all of the parliamentarian colleagues, we will certainly be marshalling all of these issues in the interest of the population. So you can stay tuned for a continuation of a like conversation like this in the parliament, certainly coming from our side, members of the opposition. I want to now say particular thanks to my panelists. I have to say, I know Mr. Jawala Rambaran is a very busy person. He has his own professional commitments that he must maintain, and he would have on short notice agreed to come on the program. So I really want to thank you. And your insight, of course, is something that I know not only myself, fellow panelists, and the population treasure. As I started off, he speaks truth to power. What he speaks is the truth. So I really look forward to your commentary. So I want to particularly thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
MP Lee, well, before I go to my MP colleagues, I want to say to Dr. Bhushan Singh, always makes himself available. Bhushan, I want to thank you again. You have never refused to accept my invitation, despite our discussion may be coming amidst controversy. And you would come on and still give your version, and as apolitical a manner as possible. I know you don't delve too much into the political arena, but you will still speak in the interest of the people. So I want to thank you, Dr. Bhushan Singh. My good friend, Mr. Richard Ramkisoon. Richard, I know you have commitments as well. Richard is still on the cricket field despite our joint camp running. It had come to an end in September, early September. Richard continues with his professional commitments in the cricket, continues to run his business, and being a member of the Shogunas Chamber, I know that carries certain obligations as well. Richard, thank you very much for being here. I truly appreciate your continuing support to myself and Shogunas West as well. MP David Lee, Chief Whip. He gives me a lot of, for those who may not know, he gives me a lot of flack, right? He's always there, but I say that on a lighter note. But MP Lee, I really want to thank you because you yourself will be marshalling the shadow portfolio, of course. In your portfolio, energy is no small task to deal with. And when you have to treat with some of, not some of, but a lot of inconsistencies coming from Minister Stuart Young, you really have to be on top of your game. So I know you are working feverishly to get your preparations completed to be able to respond most likely on Friday, depending on how, to use his words, he said, depending on how the dance goes, right? MP Rushton Paray never spares energy to leave Mayaro to come to Shogunas West, to come to these studios. So I want to thank MP Rushton Paray. I know you have commitments yourself. You yourself will be talking trade and industry and other matters as well on behalf of your constituents. So I want to thank you particularly for taking the time to be here. I have to thank the Secretary General of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, Sri Vijay Maharaj, the President General, Pandit Krishna Rambally, other members, who of management, TV and Radio Jagriti to make this program possible. They had religious programming carded for tonight, but this is something that they said that they appreciate from time to time when we dissect the religious programming, and we do these because this is bread and butter discussions, right? So I want to thank them particularly for allowing this. I want to thank the technical team, Josh, Bimal, Vivek, they are here. So the full team is out tonight, so I really appreciate their efforts in being here to channel this program. Ricky, Teacher Ricky is also here, so he's assisting as well. I always say this, and let me extend it as well, ladies and gentlemen. Every single member of this panel, I know on a personal note, they are very much family oriented. So they would have given up, family commitments. In other words, they would have left the comfort of their homes, yes, but the company of their wives and the company of their kids and extended family members as well. So I want to thank Vitra in the case of Richard. I know in the case of Bhushan, he is fully committed as a dutiful son, to his mom and also to his sister, his father having recently, died. So I know that he has an additional, duty cast on him to be around with his mom. MP Paray and Alicia is here in studio with us. So I have to say again, Alicia accompanies MP Paray. His beautiful wife is always with him wherever he goes. MP Lee, I know that his wife ensures that he doesn't get rango-tango like myself, and he remains conservative, right? So I have to thank her for allowing him to leave the business and to leave home as well to be with us. To my friends as well, I have to say support staff. Rushton, your support staff. I know Nicholas had to drop off some documents and things like that. Nicholas Morris to MP Lee here in studio, and that is just to show the sign of commitment that goes into responding on Friday. To my own brother, Kyle Taklal Singh, he is here. We have matters on tomorrow in the courts. I know that he's here tonight just to express his own, desire and to give his support. My own staff, Kavita Munisa is here. Karen Lopez is here. Karen Lopez Taklal Singh, I should say, is here. So they are here to support. My brother Darren Budan is here. He is assisting as well in studio, so I want to thank them. So particularly constituents of Chaguanas West, my deepest appreciation to you all and to all of, members of, the wider community. Thank you for tuning in to this program. I hope that you have been somehow involved in this discussion. You are satisfied with the analysis provided by all of the panelists. I certainly am, and I can never thank them enough for their contributions here tonight. So to everyone all around, I want to say thank you. Good night. Sitaram to the Jagriti TV and radio audience. And with these last few words, I ask you to tune in at 1:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon, this Friday, to hear the response to the budget from none other than the Honorable Political Leader of the United National Congress, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, Senior Counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, good night. Thank you. Sitaram.
आपका धर्म, आपका स्टेशन, टीवी जागृति।